Welcome, I'm Chef Deborah from Roca's Bakery in Greensboro, North Carolina. And today we're here, we're going to make an almond puff loaf. And we're going to do two parts to this puff loaf. We're going to make a buttered dough, and then we're going to make a pâte à choux dough, which is the dough that we use for eclairs and cream puffs. So we're going to start with the bottom layer, which is our butter crust. We're going to have 1 cup of flour, all-purpose flour, and you don't have to sift this at all. Half a teaspoon of regular table salt, and we're going to mix that together with our fingers. We don't need any special equipment here. And we have 8 tablespoons or 1 stick of good quality butter that is cold. Now, in a lot of my episodes or recipes, you'll hear me say everything has to be room temperature, but when we're dealing with doughs like this, a butter dough or a pie dough or a pâté sucré, we want it to be cold so that it gets nice and flaky. So we're just going to smush this butter like we've done in some of our other recipes when we've made doughs like this. We're smushing it with our fingers to coat the butter protein with the flour to make a nice flaky bottom to this wonderful puff pastry. And if you've never had this particular dessert, and I don't even consider it a dessert, it's more like a brunch item or a breakfast food because it has all these two wonderful doughs. It has eggs, and we're going to top it with raspberry jam and sliced toasted almonds and a glaze, and it is absolutely great with a cup of Earl Grey tea if you like teas, or my preference is a nice shot of espresso. So we're going to mix it until it's fairly cohesive like this. It's not sandy. It's still has clumps of butter in it. So we're going to keep mixing it with our hands. This is a good workout for your fingers too. So for those of you who might have arthritis or maybe stiff joints, and this might be a little difficult for you to do, you can definitely put this in a mini food processor because you only got 1 cup of flour and 1 stick of butter. You can actually put this in your mixer too, and with a paddle attachment, and just let it mix around until the butter starts to incorporate, but you don't want it to get to where it's a cohesive dough or a ball of dough. Then you've gone a little too far. But this is what we want it to look like about the size of large and small peas. We don't want it to get any finer than that. And we have a 1/4 cup of cold water, and we're just going to make a little well in the center of our dough. We're going to pour, I don't pour all of the water in normally because depending on the hydration of the flour, how moist the flour is, you might not need all of it. And I would rather add more water than have to add more flour after the butter has already been incorporated. And I'm glad that I did that because you can see the dough is coming together, and I didn't use all of the 1/4 cup of water. So we don't, sometimes we just have to let our fingers do the talking here instead of the walking. Let our fingers do the talking so that we can feel the dough. And that's why it's important to get accustomed to using your hands to bake, especially when you're making pastries. So I'm going to take just a touch of flour here and put it on the board, just enough to shape it before I move it over to our sheet pan. Now I've got a sheet pan here that's already been prepped with a piece of parchment. And if you're going to start baking, especially these types of French pastries, or even any pastry, invest in a pack of parchment paper because it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. I'm just going to pat this. You can see little chunks of butter in it as well, and that's exactly what we want. This is almost like a pie dough, but it's a little wetter than a pie dough. So a pie dough is not quite this wet. But now you can take this recipe and you can make 2 smaller ones if you want to share, or you can make 1 larger one like I'm doing now. So if you want to share this with someone and bless them with that wonderful pastry, then that's a great thing to do. So we're just going to take this then and transfer this to the sheet pan. Let me put this here real quick so I can get it centered so it bakes even. And we want, you don't have to be too fussy. I tend to be fussy about what I do with pastries. I want everything to be uniform. That's just the training that I have. That's about what we want it to look like, a nice rectangle. And so we're going to put that aside, and then we're going to go ahead and clean our counter, and we're going to make the pâte à choux dough. So we're going to need a medium-sized pot to boil the water in, because we're going to boil and we're going to add the flour there. So there's some things we're going to do on the stove. So we're going to clean this up a little bit and be right back. So we're going to start making our pâte à choux dough. So we need to have a medium-sized pot, and we're going to put it on medium-high. We're going to place 1 cup of water, and it doesn't have to be cold water, it can be room temperature water. And we're going to put half a teaspoon of salt in the water, and then we're going to put 1 stick of butter in the water, 8 tablespoons. Again, we want this to be a good quality butter. We don't want it to be margarine. Margarine will not work in this recipe. Like I said, I've said before, we don't worry about the calories, we just bless them out as we bake. So we're going to bring this to a boil, and we have 1 cup of flour, all-purpose flour, and I have about a tablespoon of amaretto liqueur, which I like to use in this recipe. You can use almond extract, and I would add about a teaspoon of almond extract if you're using the extract or the emulsion. So we're going to bring this to a boil, and what we're going to do is, it's going to seem unnatural. We're going to dump the entire flour right into this hot mixture, and you need a nice heavy wooden spoon, because we're going to beat this hard, and we're going to cook the flour mixture with the water until it gets shiny and starts sticking actually to the bottom of the pan. And then we're going to immediately transfer it to your stand mixer fixed with a paddle attachment. So the water is boiling, so we're going to dump. We're going to turn the speed down a little, or the temperature down just a little bit, and we're just going to start beating this flour into the water. And it's going to get very stiff. Let me get my towel to hold that. Its handle's a little hot. I don't know if you can see that, but you don't want to turn the heat off. You just want to beat, 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 and get your muscles a workout. And as you can see, it's starting to come away from the sides of the pan. It's forming a ball. You still want to beat, 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 because it's not sticking. You're just not putting a film at the bottom of the pan quite yet. So we don't want to take it off the heat. And this is actually the process of cooking the flour flavor, or the flour taste, out of the dough. And it's the same process like if you're making a gravy and you use flour instead of cornstarch as the thickening agent, or you're making a roux to thicken a cheese sauce. You need to cook it long enough to cook the flour taste out of it and the grittiness that the flour might leave. So now this is about where we want it to be. Again, this is a good workout for your muscles. And it's just now starting to leave a film on the bottom. So it takes a couple of minutes. But you don't want to overcook it, and then it won't puff up. There's that sweet timing here with this pâte à choux. So we're done with this. I believe we'll turn our stove top off. So we're going to take our mixer bowl, and we're going to bring it to the hot stove so that we're not going to burn ourselves. And get this out of the way. And we'll take this, and we'll just put our dough. You can see it's nice and cohesive, and I'll show you the bottom of the pan so that you can see there's a little bit of a film on it. That's what you want to see. So we're going to put this right on the mixer bowl, and we're going to put it on medium-high for about 2 minutes just to cool it down, because we're going to be adding 3 eggs in here, and we don't want the eggs to scramble because the dough's too hot. So we'll just put it on low, and as you can see the steam coming out the dough. So we want that steam to escape a little bit before we start adding our eggs. Then we're going to add our eggs one at a time, and I always like to test the temperature by the bottom of the bowl. That's very helpful. So we want to make sure that your oven is preheated to 350 degrees. So do that first before you start doing any of the preparations for this wonderful brunch menu item. Make sure it's cooled down enough. Now, when I was in pastry school, my chef instructor had us do this all by hand. And we got a real workout, and making pâte à choux by hand is tough. when you're dealing with hot dough and trying to incorporate these eggs into the dough. So we're going to do one at a time. We're going to turn the speed up 1 notch and wait till it's incorporated. And then we're going to add the second one. And I'm actually going to stop the mixer at this point, and I'm going to scrape the sides of the mixer just to make sure that everything is getting incorporated properly. And we'll start it up again and add that last egg. And once it's nice and smooth, we're going to go ahead and add our extract or the amaretto, whatever you're using. And we're going to mix that until it's nice and smooth. And I'll show you the texture that we want it to look like before we spread it on top of this dough. And it doesn't take long to put this together. Now, if you want to make the pâte à choux dough and just pipe it on in little circles or little dollops and make cream puffs or eclairs, you can pipe them in long tubes, and there, it's done. You can make eclairs or cream puffs or profiteroles. Fill it with ice cream and you have a profiterole. Nice fancy name for an ice cream sandwich, huh? So this is this texture that we want the dough, nice and smooth, and just so that it kind of plops off the spatula or the beater. We don't want it to be runny. If it's runny, you've added too much water or something has gone, or the eggs might be too large. You don't want to use extra large or jumbo eggs, because then you have to alter the dry ingredients to compensate for the extra liquid. So use large eggs for this recipe. And so see, the dough is just nice and beautiful. So what we're going to do is move our mixer out of the way here. And I like to use a little offset spatula. You can use, if you don't have one, you can use a regular one. But we're going to go ahead and put this wonderful pâte à choux dough on top, and we're going to spread it out. And when these two decide to marry in the oven, it is an absolute beautiful thing. I love making this puff loaf. It looks very impressive. It's very, very easy to make, and it's super delicious. So we're just going to pat this, and if you find that the pâte à choux is a little sticky, you can spray the spatula or dip it in a little bit of warm water so it doesn't stick, or spray it with your Baker's Joy. We want to be sure that it gets even, and we're going to have a thick layer of pâte à choux on here. I remember the first time I made this for my bakery, and my girlfriend Danette, she loved everything that I made. She was so supportive, and she'd give me her honest opinion. This quickly became one of her favorite dessert treats or brunch treats, and she'd come in on Saturday mornings and sit there with her coffee and her espresso and enjoy our wonderful puff loaf. So this is ready to go into the oven just like this. It's going to take about 50 minutes, 55 minutes, depending on how your oven bakes. So start checking it at about 35 minutes. It's going to start puffing up and looking golden. You want it to be golden brown when you pull it out of the oven. So we're going to put this in the oven, and we'll come back and finish it off. We'll see you in a little bit. So we're back with our finished puff pastry. When we took it out of the oven, it was about this tall, and it settles down a little bit, which is exactly what we want it to do. So we're going to just transfer it to the serving platter, and then we're going to take our raspberry jam. Now you can use apricot jam. Those are the very traditional flavors, and we're going to spread it all over this wonderful puff pastry. A seedless blackberry jam would be a different flavor for this, but I have found that the raspberry and the almond, or the apricot and the almond, marry really well, more so than any of the darker blueberries or blackberries would. So we just want to spread it around like that. Then we're going to just liberally just toss our slivered almonds that have been toasted. Heavy coating of the almonds, because we want that crunch and all the mouth textures on here. That is just beautiful, with a soft, delicious, buttery texture of the doughs that are baked together, and then the almonds. Now we've made our glaze, and if you've watched any of our episodes, the glaze are easy to make. It's the nectar of the bakery. It's confectioner's sugar and a little bit of vanilla. Could be a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, depending on how much you start with. But we started with about 2 cups of powdered sugar and maybe an eighth of a cup of milk and a half a teaspoon or teaspoon of vanilla. But we want a consistency like this so that it drizzles pretty nicely over the top. And we're going to be very liberal with this as well. This is great for Christmas. I sell a lot of this for Christmas and New Year's mornings at the bakery. People order this ahead of time so that they don't have to think about what they're going to serve their family for breakfast. They can just, you know, pick one of these up, or we can deliver for them. But so we wanted to get a nice good coating about this. And I'm going to give a big shout out to the film crew and our director here. They're patiently helping me do these videos, and their mouths are watering. I can hear them waiting to try this puff pastry. And then we're going to take and we're going to dust it with just we don't have enough sugar on top of this already. We're just going to dust it with just a little bit of powdered sugar like this. And our puff pastry is done. It's a beautiful thing to behold. And we're going to let it cool a little bit longer. We want to put all of this on the loaf when it's warm so that everything just kind of marries together and gets all gooey together. So when you're cutting this, let it cool for about 15 minutes longer, and then feel free to cut it and enjoy it with your family. This is Chef Deborah from Roca's Bakery in Greensboro, North Carolina. Visit us at rocasbakery.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook. And visit our online store. We have wonderful treats that we ship nationwide, pastries and cookies and bars, and we make great lemon bars and all things French, Italian, and Southern. So until next time, we'll see you later.